Hi guys, I hope you can all hear me. Hi guys, can you all hear me? I'm not sure if you can. If you can't, looks like I've got two viewers on, that's fine. Let's just dive straight into this quick webinar on multifamily analysis. So I'm going to share my entire screen with you guys. All right, so hopefully you can all see this. I'm not sure if you can or not. This is my spreadsheet. You should have all received a spreadsheet from the from the meetup. So I just wanted to start by showing you guys just how I put this spreadsheet together. It's very, very basic. There's not a lot to do here, but it's also very important to understand the metrics that go into this particular the metrics that go into how I develop this spreadsheet. So up in cell D3, it's pretty straightforward. You have the purchase price. Everything in green you have to enter yourself. So we want to make sure that you're entering the right information. So in terms of, and actually I'm going to hold on 30 seconds. This is not the right Excel spreadsheet. Apologize for that. This is the right one. Okay, here it is. This is the right spreadsheet. So starting off with your purchase price of a multifamily property, it is $800,000. You need to be entering obviously that into the into where everything that is green, you need to be entering in. So we start with 800,000. It can be anything. It could be absolutely whatever the purchase price is going to be. The sell down there is just that is 25%. I've just said a land value, 25%. The building value is 75%. The number of units is obviously just based on the revenue assumptions. And this revenue assumptions, I've just sort of split it up into dwelling one, dwelling two. It really means that I like to say, because sometimes you're going to have 2-bedroom units, and sometimes you're going to have 1-bedroom units, and they're different rents. So that's essentially why I've got those two. You could add a third line there if you had studios or 3 bedrooms, and or if you add one line, if you add a line here, you need to add a line below here in terms of the monthly rent. So we've got 26 units, and let's just assume that these are 1 bedroom, right? And we're going to assume that these are 2 bedrooms, and we're going to up the 2 bedrooms because there's never usually. I'm going to downsize this to say 20. I'm going to upsize this to 7. Right, so we've got 27 units, and I like to typically, when I'm always vetting a deal, I like to jump onto rentometer.com, and rentometer.com is a very, very handy website. So if anytime you have a deal that you're looking at, it could be anywhere across the country, jump onto rentometer.com. And I'm going to, I will, it's very straightforward. Once you jump on there, you enter in the address, the address of the property, and you say, okay, for 2-bedroom units, what is the average price? And I typically take a little bit less than the median price, depending on the class of asset. But it's a really, really handy way of just double checking that if you don't have any of the rent rolls or you don't have any other metrics, you can use rentometer.com to make sure to shore up your numbers. So without if you're on say loopnet.com and you don't have any rent meters, any rent rolls, you can jump on there and just sort of get a rough idea of what the rents will be for a 2-bedroom or a 1-bedroom or a studio, and you can just plug it in here. So for the simple purpose of this spreadsheet, we're just going to go with 550 for 1-bedrooms and 600 for 2-bedrooms. And as you can see here, that is just the sum of all that. This is monthly rent. This is then it's good to understand the metrics in a neighborhood. So, understanding the price per the average rent per square foot is very important. And this will come back to over here where you have an average square foot per unit on cell D9. So cell D9, hopefully if you get given a brochure from multifamily, they're going to have square footages in there of rentable square footage. You can take the average and put in there. You can off to the side, you can do how the average 2-bedroom is say 650 square foot, and 1-bedrooms are going to be, I don't know, I'm just 500. I don't know, whatever that might be. And you can take an average of that and plug it into the square footage cost. But it's really important to get a good understanding of what this number is, the average rent per square foot. Because then when someone says to you, I've got a property that is, it rents for 90 cents per square foot, or it rents for $1.10 per square foot, or it rents for 70 cents per square foot, you can determine where it is in the market. So if you know that market rents are achieving $1.10 per square foot rents, just from a macro point of view, you might be able to already establish that, hey, the current rents are under market value. If you get given the rent roll, you don't have to use Rentometer. Rentometer is only used if you don't have the rent roll. But if you do have the rent roll, it's good to plug in sort of the average rental income from the 1- and 2-bedroom units, and then that can be compared against your rent per square foot against the market. Now, if it's under market value, great, because you can force rents by doing renovations and stuff like that. But we'll get into that a little bit later on. In the middle here, we've got a finance tab, which is very, very straightforward. I'm saying I'm going to put 25% down. I'm going to have a basic interest that you can change all these parameters, and it's going to give you, overall, it's going to give you the cash outlay you're going to need for your property for an $800,000 property. Now over here, I've got improvements. These improvements, I haven't put anything in here yet, but typically, if you're looking to buy a multifamily, you want to sort of you want to be buying right. And when I say buying right, you want to be buying a property that has rents that are under market value. It goes back to what we were just talking about before, the average rent per square foot. So hopefully that is, you're under market value. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a second. I'm just going to check something up here. Live chat. Everything seems good. That's fine. Okay, we're going to get back to the screen. So once that is done, cash at closing, I've got like a 3.5%. Again, this is all your area might not be 3.5%. It could be 4%. It could be 5%. It really depends. This is a very basic cash flow analysis spreadsheet. But we're going to keep coming down here, and we've got the annual revenue increase, and this is just assuming that year on year I'm going to have 2% increase in my rents. That's not always the case. 2% is a good rule of thumb. You can also, I've seen as high as 3% annual rental increases, and then you're going to have operating expenses increase. Just cost to do things, renovate the apartments or keep the upkeep of the apartments are going to, that cost is going to increase year on year. So it's good to model that out. And I've got set, and this is just a rule of thumb. As you said, you will. I could even probably put these green if you want, just to understand that these could be a potential infill later on if you're in a market that is a little bit different. But for right now, I think when you're underwriting deals, just leave it at 2 and 2. It will change it a bit, but that's not the point of this exercise. The point of exercise is to understand how to use this particular model. So we come down into the revenues. So the rental income, and this has been pulled from back up here again, the 15,200. So 15,000, as you can see, 200 is equal to L13, which is the rent roll, which is equal to all that. And it should, these are equal. I don't know. I apologize. I shouldn't have. It should be pulling from this one, but it doesn't. It's all pulling from the same thing. I've double dipped here. Again, then we go into vacancy and loss. Vacancy loss. I like to use 10%. Rule of thumb is minimum you use is 5%, whatever the building currently vacancy rate is. So you might be looking at a building and currently it has a vacancy rate of 7% or something like that. Always use whatever the market's telling you with a minimum of 5%. I like to just throw 10% at it, given the fact that I'm investing in maybe class B minus, C plus buildings. It's always good to overestimate or be over cautious with your underwriting, because remember, you always have to assume that your model's wrong. So if you're always a little bit more conservative, it's just a bonus if you're better. So 10% is typically what I use. So you can then see that 10% of 15,200 is $1,520 a month in vacancy loss. Now what is 10% of 27 units? Well, that means that 2.7 units each month will be vacant. Now, is that a problem? Is that too high? I don't know. It depends on your area. You'll get a gauge for it, and if you start turning it into, what does 10% vacancy look like? Well, it means that for a 27-unit property, 2 units, a minimum of 2 units, let's say 3 because it's closer to 3 units every single month won't be rented. That's what that means. So it is conservative, but I like to err on the side of being conservative. So we're going to come down into the property taxes. These are all plugs, and guys, you're going to have to know what these are. Each market is different. I'm analyzing deals across the country. Property taxes in each different state, each different county can change. I put 2% in here just for the illustration purposes. Again, with insurance, can vary across the country from suburb to suburb, from city to city. So when you're looking, it's very good to understand what an average insurance is going to be. And you can call up different places. You can use biggerpockets.com. They are, there's a lot of online forums that you can use to determine how to get an average insurance property. The average insurance for a property. You can call up an insurance agency and say, hey, I'm just doing a bit of due diligence on a particular property that I'm looking at. Could you give me a ballpark figure of what an existing property like this will cost me in insurance? The city, and so that so I've put $7,000 here for a 28-unit property. That could be a little low, but it could be right on the money, depending. That might be right if you're buying the property in the Midwest. If it was in Los Angeles, maybe not. I don't know. Maintenance. I always use 10%. You got to think of just what things go wrong. If you're buying an existing building that's 20 years old, you want to be at least putting 10% aside from your rental income just to cover any things that go wrong. If it's a new build, it might not have as much maintenance issues, but you're going to have things are going to crop up, like you're going to have busted pipes, you're going to have bad roofing, and it's just their HVAC systems could blow up. You might buy a building. It's like buying an old car. The head gasket on the car might go tomorrow. You've got no idea until you obviously get an engineer to look at it. You get a mechanic to look at your car, but there's always an uncertainty factor there. So always keep maintenance and repairs sort of 10% on the side. Utilities are another one that it's hard to determine without ringing up the actual utility company. Or if hopefully in a rent roll that you get in a rent roll, meaning that the package that you've got from the broker has the exact rent and the exact operating expenses in it. So you can go and you can say, well, is this particular line item for utilities correct for this area? And that's that's a whole nother topic we can talk about and go into expenses and how you identify red flags. And I definitely can do a follow-up tutorial on that, but I know people's time is precious, so I want to just keep this pretty high level. We won't go off into the weeds. Advertising, I threw a number of $1,500 at it. That's per year. Think about getting a banner. If you own a 27-unit property, you might have a banner. You might do a couple of ads in the paper. You might do so when I say banner, I mean like a building banner. You might hang a balcony saying vacancies available or something like that. So what is a banner worth? I don't know. What is a couple of advertising worth? It's sort of depending on what type of building you're getting. If you're buying a Class A building, the advertising is going to be a lot more expensive because you're trying to get the maximized rent. If you're advertising in a Class B minus C neighborhood, you might not need as much. And it's also proportionate to the amount of units. 27 units. Your real advertising is for the fact that you're back to your vacancy loss. You need to get 3 tenants in each month to replace. That's what we're assuming. So what advertising do you need? Again, it's an allowance, but still something you need to be aware of. Administrative expenses. This typically is when you own larger buildings. It's a line item. So, for example, in Houston, Texas, I helped purchase a 250-unit deal. We have an office. We have a leasing office. So there's going to be admin expenses like printing, like telephones, like setting up computers and offices. So the larger the units, the larger the building, the more management you need, and then more. And this could be a line item of administrative fees. My rule of thumb is that for every 50 units, you're going to have 1 permanent staff. On a 27-unit property, you're probably going to have a living someone who is the property manager, who maybe is a tenant, and you pay them. They for half of their time is dealing with property management issues. The other half is so not property management, on-site management. The other half is they can do another day job. Then you got the management fee, the actual property management. You will need to employ a property manager. You'll have an on-site property manager, or the go-to person who deals with all the tenants. You're going to then have the property management fee. and this is typically the fee that you pay someone who is, it's quite low, just for like looking after the building, making sure that all the rents are paid and stuff like that. And again, this line item could be someone on site who takes care of that, or a team on site, or it could be, you know, just a typical property manager who comes past the units once every 2 weeks to check in on them. Contracted expenses are stuff like cutting lawns, making sure, you know, sweeping, not sweeping, like taking the trash out. It can be, you know, if you have a property in the Midwest, it could be shoveling snow. So they that's typically what that is. Leasing expenses, that is stuff like what you might do. I also like to call that rent ready, which is meaning the money you put into a property or a unit, that when a tenant moves out, it's obviously not going to be completely ready to go again. I've got zero here, but you will need to have, as tenants move in and out, you're going to have the carpet dry clean. You're going to have maybe some touching up of the paint in the rooms. You know, there's wear and tear on the building. That does come. You could argue it comes back into your repairs and maintenance, but I typically like to put it into the leasing expenses. And you got to think of what you know, if you're the type of tenant you're renting to, because if you have you know, say you're renting to a Section 8 tenant, it might be that they are going to not clean up after themselves as much as, say, someone who is a teacher or someone who is not on government assistance. But you know, that's a very generalized thing. But in my experience, that's what I've seen. So you're going to need to understand what typically a rule of thumb for leasing expenses or make ready units will be. Payroll, again, is for any permanent staff that you have on site, and that could be other people who don't actually live on site. It could be that you have a you know, a maintenance man who either lives on site or who comes around every two days, or you know, bi-weekly, because he's there to make sure to keep an eye on all the issues and replacing light bulbs and stuff like that. So there's going to be there might be some payroll expenses. On a property of 27 units, I would hope that you would be able to get it all done with the property management fee. That is what I would expect, but this fee may fluctuate if you want that sort of service. So 5% is it might be you know, it might be higher, it might be 7%. So it depends. It depends on what you have to negotiate with your property manager. So we get total expenses of, you know, X. And you know, I've got a line under here, which is a very, very important line to look at, and it's the percentage of the gross income. So what is the total expenses compared to, now remember, this is all expenses. It's got nothing to do with debt services in this expense line. Debt services come later, which means to pay the mortgage. So this is just the total expenses divided by the gross income. And I forgot to mention that gross income, you could have other income from the property, which you can maximize. It could be laundry. It could be, you know, you could pay for charge for car park. You could have some storage that you might charge for. So it's like smaller, another additional income from the property. So we have, you know, 45% of the gross income is that's, you know, in my experience, around 45, between 40 and 50% is a good rule of thumb if you have a well operating building. I think if you're above 50%, if you're in the 60s, you know, above 50, 60%, it's a red flag. But it's not necessarily a bad red flag, and I'll talk about that in a minute why. So then you're going to have the total expenses, and that should actually be equal this, the other way around, and then you've got expense per unit. So what is the expense per unit? It goes back to understanding the metrics of, okay, someone's coming to you with a property and says, hey Reed, I've got a property, and the expense, like, here's the property. I was like, what's the expenses per unit? And they say $4,000 a unit. You're like, well, that's expensive. You know, we're right. I've got it here, rule of thumb, $3K per unit, depending on, you know, if it's a 20-year-old property, 30-year-old property, it's probably going to be around $3K per unit. 2,700, yeah, it says expenses too low, but that's just because I've got an if factor, an if function in here. If this is less than $3,000, you know, expenses too low or expenses too high. but that's roughly around the ballpark. So I wouldn't be, and this is just theoretical, guys. So remember that. So then once you've got that, we can then determine the net operating income. So which is the total expenses, so the total gross income minus by the expenses. This is the NOI, the net operating income. And then from that we get into the cash flow, and we have the NOI, which is obviously that. We have the mortgage repayments, which comes from, this is the line item here, which we got from H9, which is back up here. This is the monthly mortgage repayment, and based on what your assumptions are up here. So the monthly mortgage repayment is $3,200, which is 38 grand a year. So the total cash flow per month from this particular property is a bit over 4 grand, or $52,000 a year, and the cash on cash return is cash on cash, meaning that it's the cash that you outlay. It's not the cap rate, because cap rate is for the purchase price. Cash on cash return is the cash that you put into the deal. So cash on cash return, if I go back up here, this is the total cash outlay. So it's the debt, it's the deposit, it's any improvements you do, it's the closing costs, the total out of pocket expense coming out of your pocket. That's the cash. Pretty good. Yeah, some people would easily live off 52K and break out of the rat race, and this is just goes to show what is what you need to replace your income. I've got the equity accrued here, and this is just it's the equity from the debt of the on the property. It's a little bit more complex, this particular formula. It's just what the equity is that I'm from paying down my mortgage. I've got my total return is because obviously my tenants are paying down my mortgage for me, so that is what equity I'm accruing over a 12-month period. And then so my total, so it's the equity accrued plus the total cash, and you can have a total ROI, which is going to be again based on the total cash outlay. So the total return on your investment is 26%, which is very, very good. We've got a cash flow to mortgage ratio. Obviously, you want it to be, it needs to be greater than 100%, because you are going to. You could also look at it as not in percentages, but as in decimal points. So it could be 2.3%. Sorry, 2.36 could be the cash flow to mortgage ratio, which means the total cash flow divided by the mortgage is the mortgage, the total cash flow divided by, so the net operating income divided by the mortgage, to make sure that you can cover your mortgage on this particular property. And finally, the cap rate is just your net operating income divided by what you purchased the property for, which is $800,000. So that is in a nutshell what this particular spreadsheet is. I've got a little bit down here, investors required from investors, but this goes into a little bit more understanding. It's pretty much the same thing as what I've got above, what I've got up here. Yeah, but I had it. I don't know why I included it. I just sort of, oh, that's right, because I had a little bit more those loan points, and sometimes depending on the type of financing you get, you might go with some money that requires points down, closing costs. I've got some renovations here, just some rule of thumb renovation to throw at units. So you got to think, and this goes back to why I love commercial real estate, and that is because I can force the appreciation or increase the rents. Now, how am I going to increase the rents? And this goes back to the average rent per square foot of an area. If you know what that is for the market, and someone says to you, well, I've got a property that is under market rent right now, and I'm only renting it at 86 cents per square foot, but I know that the rent in the area is $1 per square foot, so you're under market rent right now. If you don't have the rent roll, if you do have the rent roll, if you don't have the rent roll, you're going to use rentometer.com, which will give you the market rent. Excuse me. So you can determine that, okay, why is that property only renting at 86 cents compared to what the market rent, which might be $1 or $1.20? Well, the reason might be is that the units need to be renovated. So down here I have just a rule of thumb of what cost per unit, and this will depend on when you walk the property and when you go see the property. You might walk into the property, it might need some new tiling, it might need some new flooring, it might need some couple of countertops, just to spruce the property up a little bit. If you spruce it up, and you can charge an additional 30 cents, or you can increase the from 80 cents per square foot to say $1. So if I increase that, so if I go equals 1 times where's the total square foot on this building? It's bad boy. That times that. So you've got 17,000. I've got 17,500, and so there's an increase there in rent just by doing that. Now, by increasing that rent, I'm going to increase the net operating income, and through increasing the net operating income, I increase the cash flow. So they're the sort of things that why I love commercial real estate, because you can, it might be that it's it also goes back to vacancy. You might have a higher vacancy, but the reason you might have higher vacancy is that the property is in a little bit of disrepair and it needs to be given a bit of a facelift. So you go in there and you do some renovations. Now, there's obviously a whole topic and webinar we could do on just understanding the different renovations needed for a property, and I will be doing one in a few weeks' time. But I think for the time being, this is a great little start, and we'll get you guys started understanding the cash flow of the property. Remember the expenses, the property taxes, insurance, the repairs and maintenance, and utilities is really based on your local market, and there will need to be done some. You will need to do some research on that for your particular market. The other thing I didn't mention is that if you want to project your expenses per year, this is sort of these obviously this is going up per. If I click on that, it's based on the 2% increase. So I'm assuming that property tax is going to increase by 2% every year. But in saying that, my income is also going to increase by 2% every year. So obviously that doesn't change, but you might find in your market that you might have an annual revenue increase of 3% and your operating expenses are only increasing by 2% or 1.5%, or vice versa. So it's good just to project it out. This is equal. So your returns, or your percentage expense vacancy, your expenses, sorry, the percentage of total expenses to your gross income might be maintained the same, because we've got the same parameters. Your increase in revenue and your increase in operating expenses are the same. So it just cancel each other's out, and you're going to have 45%. Remember the rule of thumb here: anything over 50%, 55% plus is a red flag, but it could be a red flag in a good way. That it could just be the fact that they might be you might be overpaying for utilities, you might be paying for water, and you might be paying for electricity as the landlord. Well, you can then bill those back to the tenants through a RUBS program, and a RUBS meaning that you bill back to the tenants. So you say, well, hey tenants, I'm getting my utility bill is X per month. I'm going to divide it by the square footage of the entire rentable areas of all the units, and then allocate to each apartment what you use. And you can do that, and that's based on understanding your market and if that is supported in the market. But then what that will do is reduce your expenses, and that will then in turn increase your net operating income, and then enforce the value of the property, because the property was, say, operating at 60% expense ratio, and you've reduced it to 45. Well, you've just increased that net operating income. You might not have even increased the rent, but you've just reduced. You've just gone in and tightened up the operational efficiency in terms of utilities, or in terms of contracted expenses. You might just tweak that a little bit, and $12,000, what you might have been at $20,000, and you brought it back down to 12. That's a huge boost to your NOI, and that's going to increase the value of the property, because remember, and cap rate is equal to NOI divided by the purchase price, or purchase price or value. If you rearrange that number, value is equal to NOI divided by the cap rate. So the more that you increase that NOI in your market, say you're buying in a 9% market, then it's going to be, you increase your so say it's in a 10% market, and you increase the net operating income by $100,000 a year, then you've just increased the value of the property by $1 million, if that makes sense, because 100,000 This is the increase I'm talking about. This is not, I'm not talking about, yeah, it's $1 million. It's $1 million. So you just foresee, you might only say you might increase the NOI by $10,000 each year. We've then effectively increased the value of the property by $100,000 in equity. So that's what the bank values, and we can have a whole nother seminar on that. But guys, I hope you get a lot of use out of this particular property. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention over here, the cash flow. So this is just a summary of, this is just back down on F, the 52,000. And this is your cash from cash return, cash ROI, which is back down here. And your total ROI, which was the equity accrued plus the cash flow. Now, guys, I'm sure there's a bunch of mistakes in this spreadsheet. Always assume your spreadsheet's wrong. Don't ever take it at face value. I developed this spreadsheet by myself. It's very straightforward. It's not rocket science. You just got to get to know it, understand the quirks about it. And as I said, don't ever take it at face value, because this is spitting out numbers. Go through it and analyze why, like what are your operating expenses, and can you tweak them? Can you increase the net operating, the rental income? Can you add laundry to the property to increase your revenue on the property? There's a number of ways to force the value and to increase the overall cash flow from the particular property. So don't just this is just a tool to analyze a property and go through and play with it a little bit. Oh, what happens if I increase rents by $50 a month? How do I increase rents by $50 a month? Well, you've got to do some renovations. So hope you get a lot out of it. Please stay in touch. Please let me know if you have any comments, and I'll talk again next time. So if you do, shoot me an email again at reid@rsnpropertygroup.com, or you can go to my website, which is www.rsnpropertygroup.com. If you have any questions, please reach out. As I said, this is a free, it's a free spreadsheet. Some people at the networking event, the LA Real Estate and Crowdfunding Club, asked for it. I'll be doing another presentation probably in a week's time or 2 weeks' time on a flipping spreadsheet that I created. I don't do as much flipping. I do all my investing strategy is multifamily. So hope you guys got a lot out of it. Please take some time to review it. And once you get up and running, just start analyzing as many deals as you can. The more deals you analyze, the better understanding of this rent per square foot, the better you're going to be at talking the talk when you talk to brokers and stuff like that, and telling them, and if they're telling you the truth or not. Can you get rents of $1 per square foot? Maybe you can't. Maybe they're just telling you lies. And this is a great way and tool to become more knowledgeable of your particular market, wherever that might be. That might be here in Los Angeles, or it might be in the Midwest. So as I said, hope you got a lot out of it, guys. Please hit me up if you do need anything, and we'll see you all at the next networking event in a month's time. It will be at the WeWork offices in downtown LA, I think. Don't quote me on that, but keep your eye out for meetup.com. All right, guys, thanks a lot. Have a great weekend, and hope you got a lot out of it.